Before we begin, let me invite you into a quiet moment. This story about simple choice, deep emotions, and the things we often overlook in life. As you listen, let your heart slow down and follow the journey ahead.
Pack it up, sweetheart. Grandma said it's not really yours. Ben's voice was low, like he didn't want Emma to hear him repeat it, but she was already shaking beside him on the couch, clutching the iPad box like it was a life jacket. I stood in our living room with my work badge still around my neck, staring at my husband like he'd just told me we needed to hand our child over to a stranger. Ben didn't meet my eyes. Emma did, for half a second. Then she looked down at the tape on the coffee table. And that's when I realized the danger wasn't the tablet. It was the fact that my 8-year-old thought love could be taken away if she said no. Ben finally said, "My mom told her if she doesn't give it to Tyler, she can't call her grandma anymore." My stomach dropped. I heard my own voice come out calm, almost clinical. "Where is Emma's iPad right now?" Emma whispered, I'm wrapping it. The actual iPad, not the box. Grandma said I have to make it look nice." There was tape stuck to her fingers. Her cheeks were wet. She was trying so hard to be good. And the worst part? Ben's parents weren't even in the room, and they were still controlling the air we breathed. If you've ever watched someone use family as a weapon, and you felt your chest tighten, hit like so this story reaches the people who need it. CTA Hazhan. He'd picked her up from his parents' place an hour earlier, after their regular Sunday dinner. I'd been working late, closing out end-of-month invoices, and I only caught the tail end of Emma walking in. Normally, she bursts through the door talking a mile a minute about cartoons and dessert and whatever her grandpa let her do that she knows I'd never allow. That night, she didn't even kick off her shoes. She moved past me like she was trying not to take up space, went straight down the hall, and clicked her bedroom lock. When I asked Ben what happened, he said, "Nothing. She's tired." But the way he said it too fast, too practiced, told me he'd agreed to something he didn't want to explain. I should have pushed right then. Instead, I waited, and by the time the house went quiet, my daughter was already alone in her room, trying to solve a problem an adult had handed her. I walked to Emma and crouched down, slow. "Honey, go to your room. I'll be there in a minute." She hesitated, like she was waiting for permission to exist. Then she padded down the hallway and shut her door. Ben exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. "I didn't know she'd do that to her." "Didn't know," I repeated, and I hated how flat it sounded. Because here's the secret I'd been swallowing for years. Ben's family didn't just need help. They expected it. And Ben had been trained to pay for peace. We weren't rich. I'm an office coordinator at a medical billing company. Ben's an electrician. We budget. We plan. We say no to vacations so our kid can take art lessons. But every month, money bled out of our account to cover family. His parents' tight month. His sister Ashley's emergency. Tyler's activities. Diane's phone bill. Just until next paycheck. It was always framed the same way. Do it for family. Don't embarrass us. Don't be the ungrateful son. And in exchange, we got pressure, criticism, control. Ben reached for his phone. "I'm going to call them." "Not yet," I said. He froze. "What?" I looked toward the hallway. Emma's door was closed, but I could still hear the faint rip of tape. My child was still trying to gift wrap her own dream. "We need to see what exactly was said," I told him. "Not what your mom claims she meant. What she actually said to an 8-year-old. Ben's jaw flexed. "Emma said it." "I know," I said. "But I want her to say it to you, not me. Because if she sees you defend her, it will matter more than any apology." He stared at me like that hadn't occurred to him. That right there was the first off detail of the night. My husband, who could rewire a whole house without breaking a sweat, looked scared to challenge his mother. I knocked gently on Emma's door. "Baby, can I come in?" Silence. Then, "Okay." Emma was on the floor with the iPad Pro 1/1-inch we'd paid $1,299 for. The $129 Apple Pencil. The $199 keyboard, everything lined up like she was packing up a piece of herself. She didn't have the box open. She was wrapping the device itself in tissue paper. That's when the second secret hit me. Diane wasn't trying to take a tablet. She was trying to teach my daughter that her things and her boundaries belong to the family. Ben sat on the edge of the bed. Who told you to do this? Emma's voice cracked. Grandma Diane. What did she say? Ben asked. Emma kept her eyes on her hands. She said, I'm too little for expensive stuff, and Tyler needs it more. And if I'm a good granddaughter, I'll share. Ben swallowed. Did she say anything else? Emma's shoulders lifted, tiny and tense. She said, if I don't, I can't call her grandma anymore. Ben went very still. I watched something move behind his eyes, like a cord snapping and a different person stepping forward. He stood up. I'm calling them now. He didn't ask permission. He didn't look for my approval. He just walked out of the room, phone already ringing, and I knew the next 5 minutes would decide whether our daughter learned she had a family or a leash. Before we get to what Diane said when she answered, tell me in the comments, would you have let that call happen on speaker, where your child could hear it? CTA #2. Because I did, and I'll never forget the first thing Diane said. Ben put the call on speaker and set the phone on the dresser, like it was evidence. Diane answered on the second ring. Benjamin. Not hi. Not how's Emma. Just his full name, like he was 8 again. George's voice was in the background. The TV was on. Everything sounded normal, which made my skin crawl. Ben didn't warm up. Mom, did you tell Emma she has to give her iPad to Tyler? A pause. So short it was almost confident. Yes, Diane said, like she was confirming the weather. My hands curled into fists at my sides. Ben's voice tightened. Why? Because she's a child, Diane said. She doesn't need something that expensive. Tyler can use it for school. And honestly, Benjamin, you're raising her to be selfish. There it was. The word they loved. Selfish. The fastest way to make anyone in that family fold. George cleared his throat. It's just an iPad, Ben said. It's not just anything. It's Emma's birthday gift. Diane sighed like he was being dramatic. Emma will be fine. She has plenty. Tyler has had a rough year. I didn't know what rough year meant, but I knew what it sounded like. A justification already rehearsed. Ben asked, Did you tell her she can't call you Grandma if she doesn't hand it over? Diane didn't even deny it. If she doesn't behave like family, then no. Words mean something. Emma flinched behind me. That was the sigh detail that made me feel sick. Diane knew Emma was listening. She didn't lower her voice. She didn't soften the threat. She wanted my child to hear that love could be revoked. Ben's voice dropped into something colder. You don't get to use affection as a bargaining chip with my daughter, Diane scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. We're teaching her to share. No, Ben said. You're teaching her to pay. George jumped in, like he always did when Diane pushed too far. Ben, calm down. Your mom's not saying it like that. Ben didn't take the bait. I'm saying it like that, because that's what it is. Diane's tone sharpened. After everything we've done for you, this is how you talk to me? I felt the old script kick in. Guilt. Obligation. We raised you. We helped you. You owe us. And in that moment, I realized another secret Ben had never said out loud. He'd been paying monthly for the right to be treated decently. Ben's hand clenched around the edge of the dresser. Mom, listen carefully. You will not pressure Emma to give away her things. You will not threaten her. You will not teach her that being loved requires sacrifice. Diane laughed a small, disbelieving sound. Wow, you've changed, Ben said. Yes? Then he added, and I'm done. He ended the call. No, we'll talk later. No, let's not fight. Just click. Emma let out a sob like she'd been holding her breath all weekend. I crossed the room and wrapped my arms around her. She smelled like Diane's perfume, and it made my throat burn. Ben stared at the dark phone screen for a long second, like he was watching a door close. Then he walked out of the bedroom again. I followed him into the kitchen and saw him open our banking app. At first, I thought he was checking balances. Then I watched him start canceling transfers. $650 a month to Diane and George. $400 a month to Ashley. $220 a month for Tyler's activities. $180 for Diane's phone. My mouth went dry. Ben. He didn't look up. I'm done funding people who make my child cry. It landed in my chest like a weight and a relief at the same time. The off part was how fast he moved, like he'd been waiting for permission from himself. But here's the next secret. Cutting money isn't just financial. In a family like theirs, it's a declaration of war. Ben hit confirm on the last cancellation, and I knew Ashley would notice first, because Ashley watched Ben's payments like they were her paycheck. If you've ever felt that creeping suspicion that someone in your family loves your support more than they love you, comment, I see it, so you know you're not alone. CTA #3. It took less than 12 hours. The next morning, my phone lit up with a Facebook notification. Ashley had tagged Ben and Emma. A long post. Dramatic. Public. She called Ben proud. Said he was cutting off family right before Tyler's birthday. Said he was punishing a child. And then she wrote the sentence that made my hands shake. Emma didn't need that iPad anyway. She said my 8-year-old was spoiled, like it was a fact, not a weapon. Ben didn't explode. He didn't post back right away. He sat at our kitchen table with a cup of coffee and scrolled, silent, while Emma colored at the other end like none of it was happening. That was another wrong detail. Emma had no idea her name was being used online like bait. Ben finally looked up at me. I have receipts. He said it like he'd been holding that phrase in his pocket for years. He opened his email, pulled up bank statements, screenshots, transfer histories. Years of them. Then he started typing. I watched over his shoulder as he wrote. Calm and precise. Not emotional. He quoted Diane word for word. He listed the amounts, the dates, the total monthly support, and then he ended with one line. I have receipts. Years of them. He hit post. The comments flipped fast. Friends. Extended family. People who'd been fed Ashley's version for years. Some apologized. Some demanded Ashley delete it. Someone asked Diane why she was threatening a little girl. Diane and George didn't comment at all. That silence was loud, but it didn't mean they were ashamed. It meant they were planning, because 2 weeks later, they showed up at our front door with a cake, and Diane's smile looked like a reset button. Ben opened the door, took one look at them, and didn't step aside. He just said, "You're here because the money stopped." And Diane's face twitched just for a second. That's how I knew the next part would be worse. Diane held the cake out like a shield. "We brought dessert. Can we come in?" George stood behind her with his hands in his pockets, eyes already scanning our living room like he owned it. Ben didn't touch the cake. "Say what you came to say." Diane's smile tightened. "We think there's been a misunderstanding." I stood a few feet behind Ben, half in the hallway, so I could see Emma's bedroom door. She was inside, drawing. She didn't know her grandparents were on our porch. That was intentional. I wasn't letting them ambush her again. Diane glanced past Ben, trying to find Emma with her eyes. "Where's my granddaughter?" Ben's voice stayed level. "Not available." Diane's tone dropped into hurt. "Ben, don't do this. Families don't keep children away from grandparents." George nodded like it was law. Here was the sigh detail. They didn't ask how Emma was. They didn't ask if she was okay after crying herself sick. They asked for access. Ben said, "You threatened her." Diane's eyebrows lifted, offended. "I did not threaten her. I corrected her. She needs to learn what sharing looks like." Ben didn't argue the word choice. He went straight to the line she couldn't twist. "You told her she couldn't call you grandma." Diane's mouth tightened. "If she's going to act spoiled, then yes." I said that. She needs to respect what family is. I felt my palms go cold, because Diane still thought she was the judge of Emma's worthiness. Ben stepped forward, just enough to block the doorway completely. "You don't get to make my child earn your love." Diane's voice turned sharp. So now you're going to punish us? Over a tablet? It wasn't a tablet, Ben said. It was her dream, and you tried to take it. George finally spoke, a calm voice meant to sound reasonable. Ben, you know your mother. She cares. She worries about Tyler. There it was again. Tyler. Like the whole family existed to keep Tyler comfortable. I'd always known Tyler was favored, but I didn't understand the depth until that moment. Another secret surfaced. Diane wasn't just entitled. She was grooming the family around Tyler's entitlement, using Emma as collateral. Ben's eyes didn't leave them. Here are the boundaries. He said it like he was reading off a contract. No more money. Diane inhaled sharply, as if he'd slapped her. Ben continued. If you want to see Emma, you apologize. A real apology. To her, not to me. Diane tried to speak, but Ben lifted a hand. And visits are supervised. You don't talk to her alone. You don't bring up the iPad. You don't bring up sharing. You don't guilt her. One violation and it's over. George's face hardened. You can't set rules for grandparents. Ben didn't blink. Watch me. Diane's voice went thin. Benjamin, you are not the son I raised. Ben said. No, I'm the father she deserves. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. I couldn't. If I cried, Diane would file it under overreaction. Diane's eyes flicked toward me like she'd just remembered I existed. And you're okay with this? That was the familiar play. Isolate Ben, recruit me, make it a marriage issue. I kept my voice even. I'm okay with Emma not being threatened. Diane's lips pressed together. You're teaching her to be selfish, I answered. We're teaching her that no doesn't cost her love. Diane's face tightened. George's jaw worked like he was chewing anger. Then Diane pushed the cake forward again. We brought this. We're trying. Ben finally took the cake, only to set it on the porch railing, untouched. You're not trying. You're negotiating. Diane's smile disappeared. Fine. If you want to be like this, don't come crying to us when you need help. Ben said. We haven't been the ones asking for help. The air went still. Diane's eyes narrowed. That was the new off detail. She looked less like a grandmother and more like someone calculating what leverage she had left. She straightened her shoulders. If Tyler's heart breaks on his birthday because you took something away, that's on you. Ben's face didn't change, but I saw his hands clench. Tyler's birthday. Something clicked in my head, a piece I hadn't had before. 2 weeks earlier, Tyler had apparently expected the iPad at his party. How could he be that sure? Unless Diane had promised him. Unless this wasn't a spontaneous lesson about sharing. Unless it was a plan? That was the secret that made my stomach turn. Diane had already told Tyler the iPad was coming before Emma ever got home, meaning my child had spent that entire weekend being pressured to fulfill a promise she never made. Ben said, "Get off my porch." Diane's face went stiff. We will, but this is going to tear the family apart. Ben nodded once. You tore it first. They turned and walked back to their car, George's shoulders rigid, Diane's head high like she'd been wronged. As soon as their taillights disappeared, Ben exhaled and leaned his forehead against the door. I put a hand on his back. Are you okay? He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, I didn't realize how much I was paying them to keep them happy. It was the first time he admitted it. If you're still with me, subscribe, because what happened next is where I had to decide if protecting my daughter meant burning every bridge we had. CTA-4. That night, after Emma went to sleep, Ben and I sat at the kitchen table with our laptops open. Not to rant, to document. Screenshots of Ashley's post before she edited it, copies of Ben's reply, bank records. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I messaged Tyler's school counselor. Not to accuse. Not to start drama. To ask carefully if Tyler had been having a rough year, like Diane said. Because if Diane was lying about that, then she was lying about everything. The counselor replied the next day, and the answer made my blood run cold. The counselor didn't tell me private details. She couldn't. But she did confirm one thing. Tyler wasn't struggling academically. He wasn't in crisis. He wasn't lacking supplies. The words she used were polite, professional, but the meaning was clear. Diane's rough year story was smoke. That was the new secret. The iPad wasn't about need. It was about want and about power. I showed Ben the email. He stared at it for a long time, then said, "So she used that to justify pressuring Emma." "Yeah," I said. "She needed a reason that would sound noble." Ben rubbed his face. "My mom always has a reason." And then the next wrong detail surfaced. Emma started acting careful. Not loud careful, quiet careful. She asked permission to use her own iPad. She apologized when she dropped a spoon. She stopped asking for her favorite snacks like she was afraid wanting things made her bad. One afternoon, I caught her erasing a drawing over and over, tearing up the paper each time. "What's wrong?" I asked. Emma shrugged, eyes glossy. "I don't want to be spoiled." I sat down on the carpet with her. "Honey, having a gift doesn't make you spoiled." She whispered, "Grandma said it does." There it was, the poison still working its way through her. It made me furious in a way I didn't show. I kept my voice soft. Grandma was wrong. Emma didn't argue. She just looked relieved, like she'd been waiting for an adult to say it out loud. That night, Ben made a decision I didn't expect. He called Ashley. Not to fight. To offer one clean line. "You can disagree with me," he said, "but you will not use Emma's name online again." Ashley laughed, like it was absurd. "So now you're censoring me?" Ben's voice stayed calm. "I'm protecting my kid." Ashley's tone turned sharp. "You're making Mom cry." There it was again. Guilt. Ben didn't bite. "If Mom wants to cry, she can cry about what she said to Emma." Ashley scoffed. "She was teaching her to share." Ben said, "No. She was teaching her to comply." Ashley went quiet. Then she said something that felt like a confession slipping out. "Tyler already told his friends he was getting it. He's humiliated." Ben's eyes met mine across the kitchen. That confirmed it. Diane had promised Tyler. She'd built a story around it, and when it didn't happen, they tried to make Emma the villain. Ben said, "Then maybe he should learn not to count other people's things." Ashley's voice rose. "He's a kid. So is Emma," Ben said. "And she's the one you're okay hurting." Ashley hung up. Ben put the phone down and stared at the wall, breathing slow. He looked like he wanted to be sick. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" he asked me. I didn't answer with comfort. I answered with truth. "I think you're doing the first right thing you've ever done with them." Ben nodded once. Then we did the thing families like Diane's hate most. We told the truth to the wider family. Not in a screaming post. In a simple message to the group chat. What Diane said, what Emma did, at 1 a.m., what boundaries were set. A few relatives replied with shock. Some with silence. A couple with the classic line, "But she's your mother." Ben responded once, "And Emma is my daughter." After that, Diane tried a different angle. She texted Emma directly. We didn't know at first because Emma's iPad was set up with my Apple ID, but she still had messages enabled for a few trusted contacts. One evening, a notification popped up while Emma was showing me a drawing. "Grandma Diane, I miss you. Are you being a good girl?" My stomach tightened. Emma's smile faded. She looked at me like she'd done something wrong just by receiving a message. That was the off detail. Diane was still trying to reach around the boundaries, still trying to get access without accountability. I took the iPad, opened the thread, and saw more. "Grandma Diane, I'm sorry you were upset." Not, "I'm sorry I did it." "I'm sorry you were upset." Then, "Grandma Diane, families share. Don't let your mom make you selfish." I felt my face go hot. Ben read it and went silent. Then he said, "Okay, just one word." And I knew what it meant. He blocked Diane on Emma's device. He also changed Emma's weekend settings, tightened every parental control, and removed anyone who wasn't safe. Then he did something that felt symbolic. He took the old family group photo off the wall, the one with Diane in the center like a queen, and replaced it with Emma's first animation storyboard, taped up in the same frame. A different kind of family portrait. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your child safe, tell me, what would you have done when Diane texted my daughter behind our backs? CTA #5. Because when Diane realized she couldn't reach Emma, she came after me. 2 days later, my boss called me into her office. She looked uncomfortable. Someone left a voicemail about you. My stomach sank. The voicemail was Diane. She didn't threaten me, not directly. She just said she was concerned about my mental state, that I was isolating Ben from his parents, that I was using a child as leverage. It was manipulation dressed as concern, and it was dangerous. Not because my boss believed it, she didn't. She knew my work. Dangerous because Diane had crossed into my job. She'd found a new pressure point, and she'd done it with that same justification. For family. I went home shaking. Ben listened, face hardening. Then he opened his laptop and searched for something I didn't expect. Family lawyer consultation. That's when I realized we weren't just setting boundaries anymore. We were preparing for escalation, and the next move would decide whether Diane could keep rewriting our lives. Before I tell you what we did next, I need to know, what would you do if your in-laws called your workplace to paint you as unstable? Comment your guess, because our next step shocked even me. CTA #6. The lawyer didn't laugh at us. That mattered. She listened while Ben explained the money, the threats, the Facebook post, the text messages to Emma, the call to my workplace. Then she said, "You're doing the right thing by documenting. Keep everything." She walked us through options we hoped we'd never need. Cease and desist letters, harassment documentation, how to handle unwanted contact with a minor. Hearing it in legal language made it real. Diane wasn't just difficult. She was willing to endanger my family's stability to get control back. Ben asked, "Can we stop her from contacting Emma?" The lawyer said, "You've already started. Block, supervise, and if it continues, we can escalate." On the drive home, Ben was quiet. Then he said, "I always thought being a good son meant swallowing things. I watched the road. And now? Now I think being a good father means not swallowing." That was the final secret. Ben didn't just cut off money. He cut off the role he'd been assigned. We didn't go nuclear right away. We didn't blast Diane online again. We just stayed consistent. No money. No unsupervised access. No private messages. No conversations where Emma could be cornered. Diane tried a few more times. A card in the mail addressed to Emma with a sticky note. "Call me." We returned it unopened. A message to Ben. "Dad's blood pressure is up because of this." Ben replied once. "See a doctor." Ashley tried guilt again. "Tyler's depressed." Ben asked, "Has he seen a counselor?" She didn't answer. Slowly, the noise faded. 6 months passed. Emma turned 9 a few months later, but she still talked about that weekend like it was yesterday. The iPad stayed. The Apple Pencil stayed. The keyboard stayed. But what mattered more was what changed in her. She started asking for what she wanted again. She took up space. She laughed loud. One afternoon, I came home from work and found her at the kitchen table, iPad propped up, drawing characters in motion. "Look," she said, eyes bright. "This is my first episode." She'd built a tiny animated storyboard about a girl who protects her dragon from people who say it belongs to the village. It wasn't subtle, and it didn't need to be. Ben watched her draw for a long time, then knelt beside her. "I'm proud of you," he said. Emma paused. "Even if I don't share it?" Ben smiled, a real one. "Especially if you don't share it when you don't want to." Emma nodded like she was filing it away. I felt something in my chest loosen. A week after that, Diane and George showed up again. No cake this time. Diane stood on the porch with her arms crossed. George looked tired. Diane said, "Are you going to keep doing this forever?" Ben didn't move. "Doing what?" "Punishing us!" she snapped. Ben said, "It's not punishment. It's protection." George spoke quietly. "We just want to see her." Ben nodded toward the living room window. Emma was inside, drawing, safe, unaware. "You can," Ben said, "if you apologize properly." Diane's face twisted. "I already said I was sorry she was upset." Ben shook his head. "That's not an apology. Diane's voice rose. You're making me grovel. Ben's voice stayed calm. You made an 8-year-old feel like she had to buy your love with her dream. Silence. Diane's mouth opened, closed. And for the first time, George didn't back her up. He looked at her like he was tired of the performance. That was the last off detail. The strongest ally Diane had was finally watching the cost. Diane's shoulders dropped a fraction. Fine, she said, brittle. I'm sorry I said you couldn't call me Grandma. Ben didn't accept it yet. To her. Diane swallowed hard, eyes flashing with resentment, but she walked in. Emma looked up from her iPad, startled. Diane approached like she was stepping into someone else's territory, which, for once, she was. Emma's voice was small. Hi. Diane forced a smile. Hi, sweetheart. I'm sorry I said those things. You didn't deserve that. Emma stared at her, then looked at me. I nodded slightly, not telling her what to do, just letting her know she was safe. Emma said, Okay, not I forgive you. Not I missed you. Just okay. Diane's eyes flickered, wounded by the lack of instant warmth. But that was the point. Love wasn't a switch Diane could flip anymore. They stayed 10 minutes. Ben stayed in the room the whole time. I did too. When Diane started to say, in our family, Ben cut in, gently but firm. No lectures. Diane bit her tongue. After they left, Emma exhaled like she'd been holding her body tight. Ben crouched beside her. You did great, Emma whispered. Do I have to call her Grandma? Ben answered. Only if you want to. Emma nodded, relieved. That was dignity returning in real time. Emma went to bed early that night, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't hear tape or whispers through her door. A month later, Ashley tried again. She invited Ben to Tyler's next birthday party, like nothing happened. Ben replied, We'll think about it. Ashley pushed. Mom says Emma should bring the iPad so Tyler can see it. Ben didn't argue. He just wrote, No. Ashley sent a string of angry messages. Then, You're tearing the family apart. Ben replied one last time, No. We're refusing to be torn apart. That's where the story lands now. Emma still has her iPad. She's working on her first little cartoon series, one frame at a time. And every time she draws, she's practicing something bigger than art. She's practicing ownership. Ben learned something too. He doesn't need to pay to be called a good son. And Grandma isn't a title that comes with the right to demand sacrifice from a child. Here's the question I can't stop thinking about, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments. If family asks a child to give up their dream to keep an adult happy, is that still family? Or is it a debt collectors club with matching last names? CTA #7.